Hello, everybody, and welcome to the March 8th, 2022 iteration of the Kubernetes SIG Windows community meeting. As always, these meetings are recorded and uploaded to YouTube, so be sure to adhere to the CNCF Code of Conduct. I'll start with some announcements. First announcement is code freeze for 124 is March 9th. I think it straddles the time border difference, so it's March 30th UTC and it's March 29th for PST based folks. So that's exactly 3 weeks too. So just be aware of that if you're working on enhancements or changes that you want to get into 124 release. Next announcement is the leads and myself have completed the annual report for each SIG. That's available here. It's linked to it there in the Kubernetes community repository. These annual reports are a requirement for all SIGs and working groups in the CNCF and projects, but they're a good chance for the SIG leaderships to highlight things that the SIG has worked on in the past year, areas that like initiatives or areas that need more contributors, also share recordings and everything like that. So if you're interested, please take a look. They're just markdown files. If anybody has anything they'd like to add or anything, please go ahead and open up a PR for that. And if not, just take a look. Oh, it's also a good opportunity to make sure that things like each SIG's README and contributing guidelines are up to date. And we did update the contributing guide this year. It was quite stale. So it's a nice reminder to just go ahead and make sure those resources are up to date. Okay, I don't see anything else on the announcements or much on the agenda. I can do a demo if you want. I did want to comment too, I've noticed a little bit of a pattern of there being not a lot of agenda items on the agenda going into the meeting, but then it seems like each week we fill up most or all of the time. So I was wondering if people, how people wanted, if people had any thoughts or concerns about that. I want to be aware of everybody's time. So I'm not sure if people would prefer to keep doing this and we can just have kind of ad hoc discussions, or if anybody would rather us cancel the community meeting if there's not much on the agenda. Let's just take a couple minutes and give thought, or people can comment about that. I personally find these meetings valuable even when there's not really a structured agenda. And they're half an hour once a week. So I'm fine keeping them standing, but does anybody have any thoughts? I don't know. James, Claudio, you guys are, Brendan, Alongo, you guys are pretty consistent attendees. So if you have any thoughts.
I kind of find it very useful actually. Anything issues or something which we run into, or the idea, information what we collect, where we are sharing or we are getting some feedback or information from other folks, it is really useful and valuable to us actually. I would like to continue. We can change the format or something here and there if folks want, but overall, I find it very useful and informative.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Claudio.
I agree with him. I think it's very useful especially for newer folk to just drop in and get to know the community first. If we don't have a lot of on the agenda, we can always discuss future plans or new things that we're working on and so on and so forth. And there were a couple of cases in the past when people from the community were actually coming up with questions for us during the meetings, even if they weren't specifically set in the agenda itself. So in regards to that, I think having meetings are still valuable.
Okay. Yeah, I find them valuable too. I just want to make sure everybody feels like it's a good use of their time and wanted to be respectful of everybody's time too. So
yeah, and just so everybody's aware, I think if you join the SIG Windows mailing group, then which is at the top of this document here, you'll get access to be able to edit this document. And so you can add any agenda items. You don't have to necessarily wait to the day of to show up. And that also helps myself and Mark and other folks to just be prepared for any kind of questions that come in if they do, or maybe do a code review of something that we want to discuss before we meet. So
cool. Yeah, that's highlighted here too. That's a good point, James. I have seen a couple other SIGs recently start adding headers and footers to their meeting note documents to highlight that, because sometimes people don't see this. I think I will do that to this document too after the meeting. Okay, does anybody have anything they want to discuss? I have something I can demo if people want, or we could discuss other things or in the meeting. It's really up to you guys.
I may have one question regarding 2022 support. I think David on this call, so we ran into some issue with the traffic, east-west traffic, and the private build what he provided to us. Indeed, it fixed the problem, but the workaround, Mohammed, I think Mohammed is also in the call. The one of the workaround what he suggested for overlay, it did not work for us. But again, the OS fixed what the DLL files, the fix what he gave it, it fixed our problem. So we have two questions. One is that about the workaround. The second one is that the ETA, approximate ETA is like April 19th is what he has communicated. I'm not sure whether it is officially the date which is communicated by Microsoft, or I want to know about the date so that if our customers ask, we will be able to communicate to the customers as well, right? Second one is that about the workaround. I just wanted to know whether if anyone tried or not.
First, is this there's a thread that's being discussed in Slack. Is that
yes? Yeah, you are right. Yeah, that's yes, yes.
Okay, I'll link to that. I think it started with Sebastian. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, I just added it.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Yeah. So
Mohammed, please go ahead if you have anything to add. Just that anyway, the discussion is there, everything in the thread. I just, the two questions what I have, like the date, whether is it official or that, and the workaround.
let me share the Slack too real
That
quick.
basically covers everything.
Yeah, I think David is on the call. He could
Yes.
speak to the date.
For the date, that is tentative, so it's not 100% guaranteed. And all the dates that even the CSD team directly, the servicing division at Microsoft give out, it's always tentative and pending additional testing and validation. And so if there's, for example, a separate issue found in the payload of the cumulative update, then a cumulative update might ship later, for example. So that being said, it is scheduled to be included in the cumulative update released on April 19th, but that's always pending, that caveat that everything, all the testing, and there are no other issues found.
Okay, so that is a tentative one. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So even if I ask the servicing team at Microsoft, they will say to me it is the tentative date.
I think that was that April 9th or 19th? I thought I saw 19th.
19th.
Yeah,
The
so
4C release.
And do you know when a
Sorry, is that 2020?
Nope, 2022. Sorry.
Yes. And regarding the second issue of the workarounds, so there was two issues. One was that the load balancing would not work for if you try to connect from a pod to cluster VIP, or like the service VIP. And then the other issue was that the pod to pod traffic might fail. And so for the pod to service traffic failing, that one you could, I think that one was only on L2 bridge, and the workaround was, oh, I'm getting a little bit mixed up. I'd have to review the notes, but one of them was that, yeah, the pod to pod workaround, that workaround was to disable WinDSR mode. That would resolve the pod to pod connectivity issues. And the other one was on, I think, L2 bridge only, where it was pod to service traffic would fail. And that
Okay.
one you could enable the local traffic policy.
Okay, so ours is not a L2. That's why it didn't work. But ours is not L2. I think ours is over. So,
I see. Okay, yeah, right. You're using.
so now we are clear. Okay, I just got confused because when the thread when we discuss about the one more thing. Okay, now it's clear. So it's good for
Mark
us.
wrote the documentation that had the right steps in it. So maybe, but I'm pretty sure it was on L2 bridge.
Let me,
Yeah,
I
no,
can,
that is why the confusion came. I know
pull that up.
it specifically mentioned L2 bridge. So we are not using, so that's why I wanted to double check. Thanks.
let me. I think there's a warning.
Yeah, let's double check that. Yeah.
Is that, yeah, that's these issues. I think one were there's pod to pod connectivity on L2 bridge networking, and then there's the node port service issue on overlay.
Hang on.
Are we, did this get updated, David? I think that there was an issue created for this. No, it didn't get updated. We should update this.
Yeah, do you want me to respond on this?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll drop this in the meeting notes too. Cool. Any other questions about networking on Windows Server 2022?
One more thing, what we are trying to do is, Muhammad, what is trying to do is that we are going to have a golden image with whatever suggestion the private images given by David. And we are going to run our CI to make sure that, what do you call it, whether we are going to run into any other issue or this is the only issue. So probably we will do an update on that.
Okay, I think make sure that those images are not accessible to the public, I think, right, David?
Yeah, they're not accessible.
Well, but make sure that if they make an image based on those, that those images are also not accessible to the public.
For sure.
Okay.
This is only for our testing. Just wanted to make sure because David was asking how about other traffic and everything else are working. So we wanted to make sure that everything works apart from this issue, right? Then we can kind of like 100% say when it is ready, then we know we covered everything. We will not have any surprise at the last minute.
Yeah, great. That would be really helpful. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
We want to make sure we catch all the issues with Server 2022 as soon as possible, if there's anything else.
Cool. Welcome, Jay.
Hey,
We were just discussing some private fixes for the Windows Server 2022 network issues that we have discussed in the past.
okay, L2 bridge.
There was two sets of issues. One was pod-to-pod traffic for L2 bridge, and one was there was load balancer issues or no port service type issues on overlay. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to discuss?
I had a little one-off with the Microsoft folks about the kubeproxy kernel space, and we sort of have it working at this point in KPNG, and it's kind of in this sort of intermediate state now where I was talking to, I forgot what was the guy's name. James knows his name, but James isn't here. I don't think. Oh, James is here. Yeah.
Servant.
Yeah. Yeah. So Subham is there. And so I think we're kind of in this place where we are thinking to redesign the kernel space proxy now that it's working in KPNG, because we can do that. And since KPNG is kind of a total rewrite of the kube proxy, it's kind of like the perfect place to do it. And it has all the APIs that you would want that would allow you to, for example, not have to run a watch from a Windows node and so on and so forth. So it's just more of an announcement than anything else. I mean, you know, if anybody wants to be involved in that, they can be, but it's a very, very detail oriented and time intensive thing to be involved in it. So, but if anybody wants to, just like reach out to me on the SIG Windows Slack channel and make sure you have time. Make sure you have at least a couple of weeks to really dig into the code and start learning it, because it's not for the faint of heart to redesign the kernel space proxy. And I'm not going to be necessarily doing it, but I think it's going to be driven by Microsoft. But I'm happy to help also. So I don't know if the Microsoft folks have talked any internally about that. That's kind of my sort of hidden question there. I don't know if you've heard anything about that on your end ever since that last conversation, James.
I haven't, but I know Servant has it on his list to discuss and figure out. It'd really be probably his team driving it.
Cool.
Do you have any comments on that, David, or thoughts too?
No, I think right now over the next month or two, our priority will probably be on improving the regular kube proxy.
Okay.
And the HNS interaction to make that more scalable.
Cool.
Make it take less time to plumb services at a larger scale.
Cool.
But then I think this is also still something that we want to do as well. So
yeah, I mean, maybe as you do that, maybe we could sort of talk through it, and you could sort of maybe demo that at SIG Windows, how you're doing it, so that sort of knowledge is there, and we can sort of transfer that into the KPNG folks, so we get that plumbed in there. Or if you want, there's a pull request I have into KPNG that ports the existing kube proxy over, and maybe you could sort of also add that there if you want. Maybe just reach out and just keep me abreast of what's going on if possible.
yeah, sure. Yeah. Servant is pretty closely involved in both the developments. So
Cool. All right.
Do you want to link that the pull request you mentioned in the meeting notes, Jay?
Yeah, I'll add it.
Awesome.
So while I'm doing this, just so folks know, like the way that this has been done is it's literally like I've taken the existing proxy and sort of literally sort of cut it up into little pieces and made it so that it can be triggered from the KPNG API. So it's a pretty nasty piece of code, right? So you can make fun of me if you want, but there's a lot of context, and really this implementation of KPNG doesn't look like a major improvement because it's not actually leveraging KPNG in the purely idiomatic way, but the next one we can do that. And if some folks want to see what we really want to do with KPNG is check out the NFT or the IPVS implementations, and there's no caching there, right? So it's super easy to understand what's going on. But in this one, I have all the kube proxy caches in the code, and so it's like, oh gosh. But it does already have one sort of fundamental improvement, which is that it can take its own configuration. It's not coupled to the configuration of the other kube proxies. So if we, folks want to add new features in here, it'll be pretty easy. Anyways, that's all I've got.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing.
Doug Landgraf is working on this with me also. So just FYI, he's been helping me to test it, and he fixed one of the issues in it a couple of days ago also as well.
Sounds good. Okay, I can do a quick demo of getting some of the more end-to-end workflows for a CSI driver working as host process containers. If anybody's interested, that's what I was working on for a little bit before or last week.
Cool.
I have a pull request for deployment files for the Azure Disk CSI driver up here. Let me share my screen. And this is not a very structured demo, so if it doesn't work, I apologize. So this is right now, all of the CSI stuff, first for some context, all of the Windows CSI interactions were developed before host process containers were kind of a thing. And that's why we have CSI proxy. Today is CSI proxy is how the CSI proxy is a component that the CSI drivers talk to manipulate the host. Where's my window? So whereas on Linux, usually those just run as privileged containers. Share screen. So today, we have a deployment file to run the CSI proxy as a host process container, and then you can still run the regular containers or the CSI driver containers as regular containers, but the deployments are a little bit convoluted. There's a lot of different value mounting going on to make sure the right parts of the folders that the drivers need to get access to on the host get mapped into the containers. We're just running it as a host process container greatly simplifies the deployment. I can show that later too. So what I have here is a cluster. It's a CapZ cluster that I have set up. It's running Calico, but right now I just have CSI proxy running as a daemon set as a host process container. So you can see that just running as a, where is it? Yep, just running as a host process container. And part of the CSI or driver installation process, there's some Helm charts that are provided. Let me run through that and show the templates. So if you set a new environment or a new Helm argument, this use host process containers, the host process, the Windows containers all run as host process containers. Let's see. I think that's these guys, yeah. So we'll run as host process containers, and there's 3 containers. There's a node driver registrar, a liveness probe, and the CSI plugin. Let's just install those. Let's wait for those. So now we can see a bunch more containers running. There's a Azure Disk Controller. This runs on the Linux nodes. This is what actually talks to Azure to provision the nodes. Why are we erroring out here? And now we're stuck in a crash loop with the disks. I think I did change something. Let me. Is it the exec probe? Okay, I'll have to look at this. All right, never mind. Probably not going to demo this. I don't think I'm going to live debug this in 2 or 3 minutes. But let's see.
Oh, I was on mute. I was going to say, Mark, how come you don't use tmux?
I do sometimes.
I mean, I wouldn't
Okay,
mind
feel like I have to find
taking a look
source.
at this. It seems like it's a good learning opportunity for us.
Okay, I think I know what's going on here. This is so with this, yeah, I was kind of going and rebasing around some other changes that were coming. This is just an unsupported flag getting passed in, which I thought I already addressed, but I can open up let me share my command. I think that there's just one extra. Oops. Where is that? Yeah, sorry about this. I think that there's just an extra helm argument that I need to pass in that I missed. Controller, no, is it up here?
No, I think this is cool. I mean, I think this is cool to see all this stuff working. And I think it's cool that you're like demoing it multiple times, because for a lot of us that don't work on this part, we have to seed it like 10 times before we remember it.
Yeah, the E to E tests are passing. So for this pull request, which is new, so it is working. It's just a config issue. I'm sorry that I'm not a little bit more prepared for this, which it was set. Let me just share my whole screen. Okay, so here's, how do I close this? Here's the Azure Disk CSI driver thing. This changed. Support. Oh. Yeah, so I think that there was a, oops, that was right there. Yeah, I think it's just this. Oh, okay, I know what's going on here. There's a new argument that got added to the Azure, to the container image, and it's getting plumped through in the deployment, but I'm using an old version of like an already published version of the Azure Disk driver. I thought I fixed that, but we're just gonna comment that out right now.
Azure Disk driver, that's the CSI driver. So and that's running in host process, right?
Yeah, right now it is. Okay, so this, here's the issue. I'm just we'll fix this up. So that argument was added new to the Azure Disk plugin or CSI driver plugin, but in a version that is still, that hasn't been released yet. So we redo this, then we should okay. Folks can drop off if they're not interested in this. I'll just finish up. Okay, so I'm gonna delete the current deployment, redo that deployment without specifying that argument, and we should see the containers come up. Running an init container. Okay, all of them are running. I'm just going to make sure that we don't get stuck in that crash loop. So while we're at it, I can highlight the differences between the deployments. So here's the deployment. Here, let me zoom in a little bit. Let me first put them side by side. Split right. Okay, so here's the deployment file for the node drivers on a Windows node that run as a host, as a regular container, not as a host process container. Where's Zoom command? My keyboard shortcuts for Zoom isn't working. Oh well. So here you can see there's a lot of different volume mounts that are needed. There's a lot of named pipe volume mounts and a couple of different folders on the that map to different hard-coded directories in the kubelet or around the kubelet, and that's for registering kubelet plugins and things like that. And a lot of endpoints that get mapped into folders that are mounted in those new volumes. With host process containers, where it's not the right file. There's no volume mounts are required. We just access all of the named pipes and all the folders on the host as kind of direct paths. So it simplifies the deployment quite a bit. There's just a lot of less redirection. Let's go back and look at this. Okay, so these are still running. So then to prove it works on there's some demos. I should just see a side driver. Let's go there. There's deploy sample Windows. So first we're gonna deploy the storage class from this file. Now we can see we have a provisioner for the storage class for disk.csi.azure.com. There's no persistent volume claims. This YAML file here, which I can zoom into, contains some. We'll deploy this and then look at this. So this is a storage class, and this is a pod that uses a persistent volume claim that's backed by a storage type of disk.csi.azure. So where is that? Yeah, so here we can see now that there's we have a bound persistent volume that's used for this. It's the managed CSI storage class, which was referenced in here. And then see the pod running. I think that this is based on Nano server. So I'm not going to wait 10 minutes to pull the image. Okay, so yeah, now we're seeing the disk getting attached. So that's the Azure Disk plugin is attaching the disk to the node. This should be done. Oh, right. And I'm running this all on Windows Server 2022. So the deployment is, this deployment has Windows Server 2019 in there, but we can edit that. We just target LTSC 2022. Should see that, try and pull the right image. Oh, yep, and so we started the container. So after we fix that up, we pulled the right image and it's running on the container now. So that's using that persistent volume claim. So this is just another example of uses of host process containers and things kind of just working with the design that we have. So I think it's just more validation that, you know, host process containers are useful and we should continue working on them. Sorry for the very sloppy demo and running over everybody.
No, that's just cool. Thanks.
Yep. Cool. All right, I'm gonna hop over to SIG Node for a little bit and then go to SIG Docs. Jay, let me stop the recording. Do you guys want to do any after hours or